Welcome into the Hot Read podcast for Wednesday, July the 11th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. I'm joined, as always, by producer JT. JT, how are you?
I'm good. I'm having a very stress-free day, which it couldn't be the more opposite from you right now. Over the last 24 hours, like the difference between us on this show coming into today's show, which I guess we'll fill in Danny because he's hi Danny, you're here. Hello.
I've talked to him about it.
But we're gonna talk about this. But like we are having just totally different lifestyles right now.
Yeah, we'll get into all of that. We're joined by Danny Kelly of the Ringer Fantasy Football Show, amongst other Ringer things. Danny, it's good to have you back. Third time here on the Hot Read podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing excellent. Getting ready to be geared up for this season already, which is kind of crazy. But looking forward to it already. It's fun.
It is fun. It's a fun time of year. We're not, you're not to the point of the pre-off season where you're burnt out. There's nothing worse than when you get to like August 23rd and it's like, can we just play some games? Yeah, it's but we're not there yet. We're excited about the training camp part still. So we're going to be talking about that, and it's all fantasy all the time today on the show because you're the fantasy guy, Danny, and we're just looking for excuses to have you on the show because we like talking to you. So we're like, let's just talk about the thing he talks about.
I appreciate it.
Things are crazy. It was almost just you and JT today, Danny, because my wife and I almost went to the hospital last night because she's having a baby, and like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Do you have like a false alarm type of?
I might leave the show in the middle of the show today. Like I don't know. All of my plans are on hold. I don't know what I'm doing.
Could be maybe
might be here any second. So
yeah, just keep your eye on the phone. And I totally understand.
Can you imagine? I missed the birth of my child talking to you two idiots just talking about fantasy football.
It's okay.
It's okay. My phone.
We can talk about while you're here. We could either have a really nice show where we talk about the Titans, or you could leave and then all hell breaks loose and I just go on my rant about how I think Michael Pittman's going to be a top 5 wide receiver. I start talking about the Mets and everything just goes off the rails. So
right.
I want all the takes. Give them.
Well, we're in a fantasy football league together. The Danny Kelly Invitational League that you were gracious enough to give us a spot in, and that there's a group chat that has just evolved into, I don't know why, but it's just a Mets chat now. So there's that.
JT and Scott Barrett are the two Mets fans, and that's just like their only place for talking about the Mets.
No one else anywhere wants to talk about the Mets. So they just
can you guys maybe like start your own DM or something?
Get a room. Jesus.
It's that, and it's the fact that everybody else in that chat is like Phillies or Braves fans, which are like the two direct rivals, and they just love to like harp on us on how bad we are.
Are you a baseball guy, Danny, or no?
No, not really. I used to be, but I was a Mariners fan forever, and so
back when baseball was the only sport in America, back in your 30s or something.
The Mariners ground me down. I just couldn't really stay connected to it as much as I probably should. I stay connected to it through my group chat like my friends' group chats,
right?
And so I like know what's going on, and I know like people's sort of like the pulse on people's excitement or whatever, but
don't actually watch the games. Yeah, that's kind of me as well. I just watch Braves games and that's about it. We're talking about football today. We're going to talk about the Titans and some fantasy relevant players, of which there are a couple. Which with the Titans, not always the case, but they've got some dudes to talk about. And then we're going to zoom out to the AFC South. Plenty of fantasy relevant guys across the division. And then we're going to zoom out even further to some other things in the league that we find interesting enough to talk about today. So if you're joining us live, we appreciate you being here. Do us a favor. Make sure you're watching on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. It's Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. Find this live stream there, and you can join Sobros Network and D Good in the comment section. Glory Day Sports, all of you guys, we appreciate you guys. Would love for you to be a part of today's conversation over there. Make sure you're subscribed and all of those things. Well, hit like, all the buttons that you can help us out with. Okay, let's start with the Titans, fellas. And I feel like we have to start with Will Levis and a muscly Mayo man. I love listening
Billy
to
Jeans.
You guys. Billy Jeans. I love listening to you guys talk about him on y'all's show, Danny, because it's just it's all about how yoked he is. Is he too
vascular?
Vascular. That's the word you guys use.
So veiny.
Yeah. He really is, and it's that way in person as well. He just is. He's a nice guy, don't get me wrong, but it is like very Jim Bro when you're around him.
Yeah.
You talked in an episode in the recent past about value at the quarterback position. And he's a guy that is going on y'all's rankings, QB 24 on Fantasy Pros, also QB 24, 189 overall. I just want to talk about the value of somebody like him. Obviously, he's not going to be a guy you're drafting to be your starter necessarily. And in a 1 quarterback league, he may not even be rostered. But if you're playing in a 2 quarterback league or in a dynasty league where you're trying to find value, I just think that the history of year 2 quarterback in a dramatic, and this is the funny thing about you bourgeoisie national folks, you don't have on the pulse of the Titans. You guys, it's funny. Right. You guys talk about the Titans. Because some folks don't really know what's going on, and I do.
We like to trigger people.
You do, and you do a good job of it. And the Titans, to your credit, Titans fans are a fan base that it is so easy to goad them on. You just have to say anything remotely. Just look askance in their direction, and it will get them to be really upset. So it's partially on them as well, but. This is a situation that really couldn't be any more improved from what he had to deal with last year. And that's not to say that it is a perfect situation around him this year. The offensive line is still very much a work in progress. The weapons are really nice, but some guys that are older, all of these things where is it perfect? No, but is it a dramatic upgrade over last year, Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins? And like, that was the whole offense and everybody else is just kind of vibing. Tajay Spears was also there to like contribute at times. Yes, it is. And you've got Bill Callahan coaching the offensive line, all of these things that could be significant future value. So I'll stop yammering and let you go, Danny. What are your thoughts on vascular Will Levis going into the season?
Well, from a point of view of process, you have to absolutely love what the Titans have done in terms of, look, we drafted this guy. We got really good value on him in theory in the 2nd round. He fell much further than people thought he would. There was a lot of indications that he was going to go in the top 10, top 5, and then he ended up falling to the 2nd round. Just a number of variables kind of played a part in that. But you have this really, really cheap rookie quarterback with a lot of upside and a lot of physical talent. And they did exactly what like the nerd playbook would tell you to do, which is upgrades an offensive line. They used their 1st round pick on an offensive lineman, JC Latham. That's a guy I like. They went and got like arguably the best offensive line coach in the NFL, which is, kind of like a hidden piece of value too. Like, I think maybe people nationally don't realize quite enough.
I think it's the biggest thing going for them on offense, frankly. And
yeah.
People see it. Yeah.
And like, especially for the type of quarterback that Levis is, where he, in year 1 took too many sacks, like held on the ball a little bit too long. Giving him some protection and giving him a little more continuity and just, protection up front is potentially massive for what he can do in year 2. And so, they went out and spent big money. They threw around a lot of money to get Calvin Ridley, veteran receiver, good route runner, guy with really solid hands, like kind of all the things you want to check off in terms of a quarterback's best friend type of player. DeAndre Hopkins still there. He's in the exact same mold. Like, just throw it in his direction, he's going to come down with it. They went and got Tyler Boyd, who is, he's at this point in his career, he's a role player, veteran guy, but again, another just rock solid, is going to be where he's supposed to be. You're not going to have to like teach him a whole new offense, ostensibly playing in the exact same offense he played last year, or like very similar the last couple of years. And so, from a on paper point of view, like, this is everything that you would hope the Titans would do. Like, I'm very intrigued with what Brian Callahan can bring. Obviously, there's a lot of anecdotes and stories about how he teaches and how well he connects to the players and how big of an impact he's had on quarterbacks in the past. Obviously, we don't have any like tangible evidence that he's a really good coach, but I think there's a lot of anecdotal narrative reasons to believe that he could really make a huge impact here. And so, and then of course they went and got Tony Pollard to pair with Tajay Spears, who I think, that's going to be a really good 1-2 combo. And so, there's a world in which Will Levis has a massive breakout this year. Breakout. Sorry, the post-COVID era. Yeah. Don't want to say that.
Affects everyone else.
Yeah. Massive outbreak in like vascular. Everyone's going to be really veiny. No, I think there's a chance where he like really, really outplays what people are expecting, just because circumstances, the coaching, the upgraded offensive skill players, maybe the scheme is much better suited to what he wants to be doing and some of his strengths. Like, when I think of Levis, he's like a YOLO type of quarterback, and get some vertical elements to this offense going, protect him a little bit better, and you might be able to get a little stew going here. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think there are certainly ways that Levis could fail, but I'm pretty excited to see how this goes.
The critique that I hear most often that rubs me the wrong way, and again, there are many valid critiques of this team and reasons why they like there's a ceiling on the season. The one that I'm hearing the most that I shake my head at is this idea where this people are kind of stuck in the past in the sense that like, yeah, Levis showed a lot of flash last year at times. And yes, they put weapons around him that I like the individual pieces, right? I really like DeAndre Hopkins. I really like Calvin Ridley. I really like Calvin Boyd or Tyler Boyd as individual pieces you can put around a young quarterback. But I don't know if he's going to be able to take advantage of those guys in this scheme, in an RPO, run heavy skill, like the idea that this is the Titans of the old, essentially. And I think when you look at Brian Callahan's resume coming in, you look at what he did in Cincinnati. I think the most interesting thing about last year, frankly, was the weeks that they had Jake Browning in the lineup, where you could have reasonably expected the Bengals to change the identity of that offense significantly, really pare it back, really play conservatively, a lot of one read stuff, a lot of RPO, a lot of running the ball, pounding Joe Mixon. They didn't do that, right? Weeks 12 through 18, Jake Browning was averaging 19 and change points per game, 266 yards per game, 11 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And this is Jake Browning we're talking about, who, is not Will Levis for all of the failings of Will Levis and criticism, skepticism there. I think anybody could agree that there's more talent in a little Will Levis than in a Jake Browning. So right. I think that's the biggest thing that I am looking forward to seeing people have to kind of eat their words on. The idea that maybe this offense isn't good, but the idea that they're not going to swing the ball around, that they're not going to spread it out, that they're not going to take the ball from shotgun and pass on first down. Like that's not, we have no indication that's what's going to happen with this team this year. It's going to be different.
Right. I think, in my point of view on like what to expect from the Titans this year, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, is like it's going to be a little bit more pass heavy than people are maybe used to or expecting.
You have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, that's national, folks.
You idiots. You even watch the game? Watch the games, dude. You grinding tape?
I watch the games, bro.
Watch the games, dude.
Don't you even watch games? Dude, the Jake Browning thing from last year. That's like, it's like a funny sort of side narrative that
people barely paid attention to it, but it happened.
6 or 7 weeks during the season. It was like the weirdest thing that like happened the whole year. It's like Jake Browning is better than Joe Burrow all of a sudden.
What was that one primetime game he played in where it's like, holy shit? Like,
I think against the Jags, right?
It was against the Jaguars. That's what it was. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't watch any of the games, but it's like
right. We'll tell you about them later.
No, but I mean, I think the thing that struck me about watching Browning play was like he had an element of fearlessness to him. It wasn't like they just, turtled up and put their head in the shell and tried to like survive getting away, with Burrow out indefinitely. Like they kind of just went for it. They kind of flung it down the field, and they had the receivers. They had, the talent to do that. And I could see the Titans being more aggressive, more free flowing than I think maybe like people are sort of expecting to see, where there's like a conservative protect the quarterback. Like maybe it's not gonna be quite like that this year. And I'm again very excited to see what Levis can do. I feel like he's probably gonna have a lot of turnovers, but also a lot of big time throws, a lot of really exciting plays. Just let him go and kind of play his style of ball, which is very aggressive, not much like concern for his own health, which of course is a double-edged sword, but he's going to be like running around a bunch. He if we're talking about fantasy, like he has a lot of upside too, because he's a really good athlete who could run around more than anyone thinks too. So he could do that element on the ground game as well.
I think the best case scenario for him is, and it's not perfect comps in terms of play style, but in terms of what the box score looks like and what the fantasy relevance is, it's like what was the year that the lights came on for Josh Allen? The where it's like, holy crap, he threw 17 interceptions, but he threw 35 touchdowns. Or like a young Matt Stafford where he is more athletic than you think he is. He is a gamer, he's a YOLO kind of guy. Again, that is best case scenario for sure. But we've seen guys in the past just flip that switch, turn it on, and I think that could be the case with him.
It happens every year. Some random guy is
somebody
does way better. Yeah,
right, exactly. Speaking of every year, last year at this time, I was listening to a lot of fantasy content, yours included, and every episode of your particular show was a rant and rave session about one Mr. Tony Pollard. The anecdote was that you and Danny Heifetz and Craig Horlbeck all went on the big man Bill Simmons podcast, and he asked you like your guy last year, and you all agreed it was Tony Pollard, which was a dead giveaway at the moment to any of us listening to stay away from Tony Pollard. However,
should have been, yes.
It was to us. You guys just didn't know.
Okay. Smart.
Right. And then when you kind of got burned on that, then the take was we should have realized this guy. I mean, Heifetz just kept saying he broke his leg this year. It was in 2023. So we're the year away from the year. And there's on paper, I think, reason to be kind of post-type sleepery on Tony Pollard. The biggest thing, honestly, for me, not going all in on Tony Pollard is that Tajay Spears exists. And I actually think he's just a better running back than Tony Pollard is. And he's younger and he's fresher, even though he doesn't have an ACL. Don't worry about that.
He'll be fine. Yeah.
Right. He'll be fine. What are your thoughts on Pollard a year removed from being all in on him and kind of getting burned on that?
Yeah, I think it sucks when Heifetz is right because he was saying it kind of all along.
It's rare, to be fair.
He's actually right. We make fun of him all the time, but he's right way more often than
maybe the problem is that when he's wrong, it is disastrously wrong. It is so loud and bombastic. Yeah,
he's really, really wrong one time a year, but otherwise he's very right. Most
it's
of the
really
time.
Funny. Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, so he obviously was sort of the voice of reason a lot during off season last year and talking about how are you guys worried? Like he really broke his leg bad. Like it was bad, does this worry you at all? We're like, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
He says he's faster now. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. He told us he's better, which, players have never lied about that ever. But ultimately it sucks because on one hand, I'm like, yeah, we were really, really wrong. He ended up being one of the more disappointing fantasy players. But at the same time, like his volume was really good. It was basically what we were hoping. He had 252 rushes, which was 7th most in the NFL. And he added 55 catches. So like if you would have told me 252 rushes and 55 catches, like he is going to be one of the best.
You're assuming that's awesome. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And that was kind of like half of our theory here. And then of course he just wasn't as nearly as explosive. And honestly, like he was just a little unlucky. He didn't score as many touchdowns as he should have. He was like, based on his volume and based on where he was touching the ball, was like his expected touchdowns was like ridiculously high, and he just couldn't get in the freaking end zone for whatever reason, for multiple reasons. And so his lack of touchdowns was really what held him back and made him such a bad pick. And part of that is just bad luck. Part of it is he was not healthy for half the year, or not fully healthy for half the year. And I still think he's a really good player. And I still think he's got some juice. I still think he's a tackle breaker, electric type player in space. Ultimately, I'm a little worried about how the timeshare is going to go with Tajay Spears. I think there's a chance, there's a world in which Spears is the lead guy and Pollard is sort of just a change up. Maybe they ride the hot hand. I don't know exactly how it's all going to play out. And that makes Pollard a risky pick. But they also gave him quite a bit of money. Again, this is a player who 2 years ago, as of 2 years ago, was one of the most electric, elusive running backs in the NFL. Now he's in theory healthy, closer to what he was, when he was with the Cowboys. And I think you can build a case that he's going to have a huge a breakout season, a bounce back season from what he did a couple of years ago. And so I don't know. I'm not going to get excited about him and talk him up just because I was burned so bad last season. But, he's still a guy that I really like. I think he's talented, has the juice. And, again, if this offense is a lot better than we think it's going to be, or a lot of people think it's going to be, then he could be a pretty good value where he's going. I think he's like RB 24, 25, something like that.
He's 22 for you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, he's not expensive. And I think his upside is definitely worth a flyer.
He's definitely, I was going to say he's a post hype sleeper for sure. Like if there is anyone this year, and especially where you're getting him right now, it kind of also helps that he is kind of moving back into that mold of not being the number one guy and having to be it all the time. Because even if you look past what the Cowboys had last year, Rico Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn, it's like they put them into that Tony Pollard role, and it never really worked out. So to the point where Tony Pollard just had to play jack of all trades last year for them. And that, along with the inefficiencies of that Cowboys offense at times, especially in the run game, kind of just led to him not being able to be that top 5 running back that we saw the year prior. Now that he's kind of back in this sort of role where, you know, the running backs coaches have been saying this entire offseason that both of them are going to get touches. It feels
it's so annoying too. We ask him like, who's the guy? And they're like, yep.
The answer is yes. It's like,
right.
is it
yes.
Tony or is it Tajay?
Those are our
go,
2 running
yes,
backs. Those are the guys.
Those are the guys. And Julius Chestnut, Dylan Johnson, they all are running backs who can get touches, and that's what we like here. And we're like, great, thank you. But I think that with Tony Pollard coming back into a little bit more of given a specific role in this offense, I think that allows him to probably be better suited for this role. So are we going to see Tony Pollard back in the top 5 running back conversation in fantasy ever again? I don't think so, but at the value you're getting him as an outside top 20 running back, I don't see a world where he's going to fall off the face of the earth. I think he can be a pretty solid running back 2 for you, like in the 5th to 7th round of a draft.
Yeah, that's how I see him too. I mean, again, it's going to come down to like how efficient he is. He's going to be able to score some touchdowns. But if he turns anything remotely back into like what he looked like prior to breaking his leg, I mean, he doesn't need a ton of touches. He just needs to be electric and explosive and score a few touchdowns and be a featured player in the passing game, and he'll be very fantasy relevant.
Yes, my wife texted me, gave me a heart attack.
Oh no,
it's fine. It's like about groceries. It has nothing to do with it's just jump scaring me. Don't do that. Danny, he had that moment though, and like I know you come on a show that's like team specific, and especially as a national guy, I'm sure you're like, let's do all the positive things. No one wants to hear me come and shit on their team. I'm not crazy about, from a fantasy perspective, I'm not crazy about Pollard and where he is, frankly, and I think there is potential for there to be some post-type sleepery business going on here. But you guys on your show, and I'm realizing this entire show is turning into like a meta commentary on your show, and people that don't watch your show are like, what's going on right now? There's some background. You guys have a bit, the Mark Andrews moment that guys have, right? And there was a moment a couple of years ago that Mark Andrews on the Ravens had a ball thrown directly into both of his hands in the end zone, and he volleyball set it into the stands and like didn't catch the ball. And it just gave you the ick. You're like, I don't want to draft this guy anymore because he had that thing. I can't get it out of my head. Tony Pollard had that last year, and I was sitting on my couch watching it. And for folks that I don't even remember who they're playing, but they're on the goal line, and it is a run to the left side.
It was like a toss play, I want to say.
Right.
They were playing the Dolphins, I believe. Okay. So somebody sent me the picture, and there's like, he's got an angle to probably like 40% of the end zone, just wide open, just end zone, clear end zone.
Yeah, we're scoring on that.
And there's one defender.
Me and JT are scoring that touchdown.
Yeah, there's like a corner chasing him. First of all, running backs are supposed to beat corners. Like corners are not good tacklers generally. Like if you get a corner, that is an advantage offense. And I'm not 100% sure it was a corner, but it was a defensive back chasing him. He's got wide open area, one guy to beat, and he gets tackled on 1 yard line. It was like the most frustrating play. I don't think he gained any.
I think he was like technically a loss of yardage. Yeah,
it was just so bad.
And I remember sitting watching it live and thinking, I guarantee they mentioned this on y'all's next. Like that was an ick moment that this guy just had, and the juxtaposition at the time on Twitter was anybody like Derrick Henry scoring that touchdown. You think Derrick Henry is not scoring that touchdown? He's scoring that touchdown, and now Derrick Henry's gone, and now it's Tony Pollard in there. And so that brings us to the other guy in Tajay Spears, who you guys have. I'm not going to sit here and purport to be better at fantasy than you are. One, because it's what you do full time, and two, because JT can attest to the fact that as good a sports bettor I am just as bad a fantasy player. I really am not. I am no good at it.
You're only allowed to be good at one of those. Yeah,
exactly. And I choose the one that I make money in, I guess. So there's that. But then I just look dumb to my friends. You guys, I'm going to tell you're wrong on this though. You guys have Tony Pollard as running back 22, and you have Tajay Spears as running back 39.
Right.
You got them backwards, my friend. I have strong conviction that it may not be exactly backwards. Tajay up at 22, probably a little bit rich. Tony
probably just need to be closer together.
They do, and right now that reflects how they're being drafted. I mean, like in the couple of fantasy drafts I've already done, you've got Tony Pollard going much earlier than Tajay Spears, and it's usually me taking Tajay Spears later. Like, you idiots, you don't know what's about to hit you. That I will be floored if Tony Pollard is significantly better in real life and in fantasy than Tyjae Spears this year. Again, because I just think Tyjae is a better back than he is.
Yeah, I think this is one of those situations where as we get closer to the season and we try and like figure out how the usage is going to work, and maybe there'll be like more discussion from the coaches or whatever. Maybe there's some indication based on how they play them in preseason games. And you start to see the ADPs move for both of the guys. And I think there could be pretty massive ADP movement for both of these players over the next couple of months. But I think it's like just for now, it feels like Pollard is going to be the starter because he got paid so much money. And that's maybe very wrong. Like that could just end up being flat wrong. And that's why, to be totally honest, like it's way better value to just take Spears right now. When there's uncertainty in the backfield in terms of like what kind of rotation you're going to be, like a lot of times you're just better off taking the cheaper player. Yeah, I mean, I don't even necessarily like disagree with you. Like, again, I could see a world in which Pollard is just an afterthought in this offense and Tyjae Spears takes over, and Pollard's going to look like an awful pick. But I think right now it's just kind of like following the money and following the experience and the track record.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't have strong conviction that Pollard is like for sure going to be better than Spears. I think that's just kind of like where we landed based on some of the tea leaves. But I'm willing to be moved on that for sure.
And then there's the world that is the Titans this year just start to kind of what they've been alluding to is using a lot of these more like two back formations, and we just see each other like Spears and Pollard cannibalize each other. Like Spears does what he's good at, and he is the passing game guy. And then you have Tony Pollard, who is just the, low to the ground, just pound it, ground and pound guy. And then it's
they
like
both get 7
neither of
points
these
a week,
guys,
and neither is
7 to
useful
8 points a
fantasy-wise.
week. And then you're like, you're touchdown dependent, and you're like, oh man, this didn't matter at all.
Right, exactly. So it's hard. I think it's hard to pick between those running backs, and probably dangerous to do so. They're kind of guys that I'm avoiding from a draft perspective, unless it's like a flyer pick at the end. It's also hard to distinguish between these receivers. And the Titans have 3 good ones, and I think that the hardest is looking at DeAndre Hopkins or Calvin Ridley. Like, how do you pick between those two guys? That's kind of the case around the AFC South. Like, there's not we're going to get to the Texans here in a minute. Also a very, like, who do you pick in this offense, receiver wise? But with D-Hop and Ridley and Tyler Boyd, who I don't think anybody's really like, oh, Tyler Boyd's going to be that guy. So between Hopkins and Ridley, like, who are you leaning and why?
I think I would lean Hopkins just based on, I think he's going to be cheaper slightly. I'm guessing, although that could change over the next couple of weeks or months. But
Hopkins is y'all's wide receiver 38. Ridley is 33, so slightly cheaper.
Yeah. I mean, I personally like Hopkins' track record for target share and just earning targets, demanding targets is almost unparalleled. Like, he is just ludicrously good at earning targets.
If you're in
like
PPR,
game.
100%. Yeah.
That's the name of the game in fantasy. I know that he's getting older. I think he's fallen off in terms of his overall explosiveness, ability to separate, but that was never really a big part of his game, to be honest. And so he has the type of game that might age gracefully and take a little bit longer for him to really trail off. And so I'm just taking the cheaper guy here. I think, again, I'm not shelling out, and it's not like either guy is super expensive, but I'm not really excited about going after Ridley based on just the uncertainties of the offense, uncertainties of the quarterback, and the Ridley role. Really, like, is he going to be, because like last year Ridley was disappointing in the way that they used him. I don't, this is the Jags, so
you don't have to tell us, man. Oh yeah,
but I think there's enough uncertainty and question marks over like how he's going to be utilized, how he's going to have chemistry with Levis, what this offense is going to look like, how much passing they're going to do. I think the one constant that I'm expecting to see is just like Hopkins is going to get a lot of targets. They're maybe not going to be like the
more
most
that he
efficient.
Provides, really. Yeah.
I think the floor is just better with Hopkins, and I think he's still a really, really good receiver, and I think Levis is going to really lean on him. So that'd be why I'd probably lean Hopkins, even though we have Ridley ranked slightly higher. This is another situation where I'm just going with a cheaper guy probably, because I think there's just enough question marks around these two that I'd rather just wait a little bit and get Hopkins a little later.
As you talk about this team, I can see the wheels turning in your head, and you even explicitly mentioned it there, where it's hard with how much like we don't know the head coach, we don't know the quarterback, like we just don't know. It's all projection. Do any of your answers change if I told like if CJ Stroud is the quarterback of this team, or if this is they're on the Jaguars and it's DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley with Trevor Lawrence? Does that change the way that you like if we say Will Levis, he's going to work out. He's going to be this caliber of quarterback. This offense is going to work. It's like functionally, he's going to have protection. It's going to be at least fine. Does that change the way that you look at this wide receiver group?
No, I think I certainly would be more in on Ridley if that was the case. Okay. But I still think I'd be really excited about Hopkins. I just think Hopkins is so good. Maybe I'm like holding on to like a nostalgic feeling or something.
I don't think you are.
I just think he's just so freaking good. He's just a gamer. He reminds me of like a Devontae Adams where he's just so good. It's like very, very difficult to get like hold him back. And again, in fantasy, this is something that's just ingrained. Targets are how you score points, especially in half PPR.
Right.
And I don't want to be living. I don't want to be living the world where I'm like, oh, hopefully Calvin Ridley gets 4 targets this week. Like I want 10 targets.
Right. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I feel like that's going to be more likely to happen with Hopkins. As long as he's out there, he's always earning targets. So that's kind of how I feel about that.
And that's the best thing like about his hands. Like you were saying, like one thing that is going to age gracefully no matter what is the ability for him to catch the ball, even if he loses his speed and some of that route running ability.
Unless he gets like a Doctor Strange style car accident.
Right. Yeah. He gets in and then he loses all of his function in his hands or whatever.
That would suck. Really would.
It would be tough. But I think that also pairs well, and we saw that a little bit last year with Will Levis kind of being YOLO. Like with a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to have a better chance at hauling in some of those wildly inaccurate passes that Will Levis can tend to know. And I think that is what kind of gives him the step up on like a Calvin Ridley, not to mention the fact that he already has the chemistry. Like he already is his go-to guy. So I wouldn't be surprised. Exactly. I wouldn't be surprised if we like out of the gates, like if DeAndre Hopkins is going like a round or 2 later than Calvin Ridley, he ends up being the better scoring wide receiver for like the first 5 or 6 weeks as like Calvin Ridley and these other receivers start to get on track with Levis. But like Levis already has that caliber, and he is like the hands technician there that can like just go up and get the ball that Will Levis wildly overthrows. And so that's why it might be a better choice just with all of those factors to go with a guy like DeAndre.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think DeAndre is a draft and sell high candidate because I think especially early on when this offense is still trying to gel, that's going to be the one constant. Whereas like those two, literally last year, the entire offense was just Will playing catch with DeAndre. And I think to start, it's maybe a lot of that. And it may be like, holy, like, wow, DeAndre Hopkins is a viable wide receiver 2 or 3 in fantasy for the first month or so. And then you sell them off before the offense starts to figure it out and they spread it out. I think that's a
well. You also and that's a good point. Plus, you tend to see older receivers trail off as the season goes on, like later in their careers. It's not always, but that's something that the age cliff starts to really like get there, and you get banged up, or defenses start to like figure out what you're doing a little bit and take away that guy. So I like that. That's a good idea.
Time to zoom out. Let's talk about the AFC South here a little bit. And we can start with the Texans, who are not in an equally ambiguous situation as a team, like in real life. The football product is going to be very good this year. But fantasy-wise, I feel like they're just as ambiguous because their wide receiver room gives me just as much pause. I don't know who to pick out of these guys. They go and they get Stephon Diggs, which I believe you guys referred to as just annoying on the show the other day. From a fantasy,
why did they have to trade for this guy? Just makes everything harder for us,
jerks. It makes it so much harder because you've got Nico Collins, who seemed ascendant coming off of last year, and before that trade for Diggs, like I'm secretly putting him very, very, very high on my list, especially in dynasty leagues of guys that I want to go get and maybe overdraft a little bit. Now, man, I don't know because we saw what Diggs did at the end of last year. There's a lot of talk about uncertainty. Is the dude washed? Was the system with Joe Brady like what was that? I don't know. What do you make of what the end of last year was for Diggs?
I don't know, honestly.
Okay, cool. Same.
Yeah, I think there's several questions you have to answer before you can get to the truth on this. Is like one, is he just washed at this point? Because he's getting to be that age where a lot of guys will fall off a cliff. It just happens so often in the NFL, and he's nearing that point. I mean, he's over 30 years old now. He's he'll turn 31 in November. So that's a concern. I don't know the answer to that. I think that he's still got it. I think he's still good, and I think it's more likely that the system change that the Bills went through was just more like, we're not relying on one guy to like win. We're spreading the ball around. Like the system was just more focused on just getting the ball to different guys. It wasn't like, let's just feed Diggs. And so I think that's the second question, I guess, is like, was it scheme or was he falling off? And then the third one would be, is he just an insufferable diva? Like this is like this is like his third team now. He's like always been really good.
Yeah.
But now we've seen two teams get rid of him, And so
it was the 9/11 pep talk where he drew the line. He's like, I'm not about it with this guy. Yeah.
God. So I think the questions there's like so many questions that you have to answer before you really can figure out what's going on here. And I just don't, I don't know the answer to that. I think my guess is he's still going to be good. He's still going to command a lot of targets, and he's going to mess it up for Nico Collins and Tank Dell from a fantasy point of view. Obviously, from a real life perspective, like the Texans are stacked. It's going to be awesome for CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud is the real winner here. But I think, they're also expensive. Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell, all top 25 receivers, I think, in ADP. And
they're not going to finish that way. Somebody's not going to be there.
Yeah, there's some some other shoe has to drop or whatever. What's the expression? But
that was close enough.
What is it? The other shoe drops.
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
What is that?
The other shoe's going to drop.
Don't ask me. I'm not the saying guy.
We did an entire 15-minute bit about how JT doesn't know anything about idioms.
I don't know anything. I'm apparently famous for like messing up like mixed idioms or
mixed
whatever.
Metaphors and stuff. Yeah.
Anyways,
you know how to pronounce words.
I think there's one of these guys is going to be very disappointing, if not all of them. And so I'm probably just going to be going to be a stay away in fantasy. In Dynasty, I'm still very bullish on Nico and Tank. This year might not be as fun as you would have expected without Stephon Diggs, but I still like those guys long term. I just think this year it's just too hard to know. And this is also a team that last year was frustratingly run heavy, balanced, running a lot on first and second down.
Joe Mixon, are we in on Joe? Talk about a guy that Joe, what do you make about this guy?
I mean, the amount of money that they gave him was
so much,
pretty dramatic. And this is a team, like I said, they're going to run a lot, and I don't think they have like a backup running back.
How dare
you? Damian Pierce is like
my eyes lit up. I said, "Uh-oh."
As much as your buddy Craig was like, "What happened to Damian?" I've never related more to like that's me.
Don't get me wrong. I love Damian Pierce. I think
might have drafted him in the fourth round of a league a couple of years ago.
Yeah. I think he's just like truly a terrible scheme fit for what they're doing in this offense, and he needs to.
Which is probably Cope, but that's what I'm saying too. Yeah, scheme fit. This guy get him to the Rams. Let this guy run.
Part Cope and part like we were just like a little too, high on him based on
preseason games where
he was a fourth round pick.
Sexy.
We'd probably be a little bit like reticent to go all in on him, but I think. He just would be a much better fit in a different style offense, like something closer to what we saw as a rookie. And so, it's like Joe Mixon, Pierce, who they just don't want to play apparently. And then, a bunch of other random guys. Darian
Albert O, I think is there still.
Is he?
I think so.
Albert O on the Texans?
Yes.
Wait, am I dumb? I thought he was a Broncos.
Albert Bowie Kunum? No, not him.
I thought Albert O played for
it's a weird last maybe
I think you're probably thinking of Agumbawale.
But they do have a weird name.
An O name you don't know how to pronounce, so you just went with O. Yeah, that's fair.
Regardless, I think it's gonna be Mixon, and then he's just gonna get a ton of volume.
I do agree with you, especially like if they could turn Devin Singletary back into like a productive running back and kind of revive his career last year, like with Bobby Slowick, like you still have some tread on the tires with a Joe Mixon. Like I think it's even just like going to be a lot better and more efficient than what Devin Singletary could be able to do.
Seven Dingletary starting running back for the New York Giants. Okay, let's do the Colts now, and Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
What's not to love? Loved him coming out. Was my quarterback one at the end of that draft process. Heartbreaking that he had to go to the Colts, and the hype is very loud. You're seeing him atop a lot of lists, near the top of a lot of lists. It's talk about a projection. I mean, the guy's played 15 minutes in the league, but the upside is just so tantalizing, and I get it. I do. Are we losing our minds a little bit? Like I think the risk involved here is bigger than people are letting on.
Oh, he's definitely risky. I mean, I think relative to most quarterbacks, I'd say, especially because he hasn't proven he does not have a long track record as a passer, and throw in the fact that he's been hurt like, I don't know, 3 out of the 4 games.
Which one are you more worried about? Are you more worried he might just not be good at football, or that he'll break again? Because
I'm more worried about the injury situation.
Yeah, same.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'm pretty confident he can play ball, and at least fantasy wise, he's going to produce.
Yeah, same. You know, especially from a fantasy point of view, because he's just such an electric runner. Like, he might legitimately be the best athlete to play quarterback of all time
ever.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of projection here. It's a little bit risky, or a lot risky, because I think there's a chance he could get hurt again. You know, there's a chance he could regress, even from the small sample we saw. Like, you know, because I think people are really excited mostly because he's really natural in the pocket. He moves around. He goes through his progressions. He gets rid of the football. He doesn't take a ton of sacks. I think he's obviously a really good scrambler. What Shane Steichen was doing.
There it is. What Steichen did, man.
Run game was so cool. Like, I just have one play in mind, but like there was a lot of different things they did, but like one play in mind where they had all the motion go to the left, and then he did like a naked boot out to the right, scored a touchdown on that. It was just like, man, the sky is truly the freaking limit with this guy. It's like Jalen Hurts plus. As a fantasy, quarterback. And so, obviously I think he's just worth the risk. I think that you have to take that risk. He could be a league winner. It reminds me of like early career Lamar, where, he could legitimately break fantasy football, but also he could break a shoulder and then not play. So it's just one of those things you have to be a little bit wary about it, but like, I think it's worth it. He's worth the risk.
I think a huge part of it, if not like the majority part of it, is what we saw Steichen do with Gardner Minshew last year. Because if they had been completely irrelevant, really middling, struggling to find any identity, offensively stagnant, I think the hype would still be like, okay, finally we get to see Anthony Richardson. Sure. But I don't think it would be where it currently is, him being drafted in like the first, second round of drafts. Because when you've got a coordinator and a head coach like that, who, no offense to Gardner Minshew, who is electric in his own right, but like, if you can do what you did with him the way that they did, you feel like, oh, this guy can work with anybody, give him anything. And now you're giving him, like you said, maybe the most athletic person ever play quarterback.
Yeah,
that is so reassuring. And I think that's again, I play musical chairs in my head with like, well, I wonder what the narrative would be if Will Levis had Shane Steichen, or if Brian Callahan was that guy where it's like that was a proven commodity, and it wasn't both the quarterback and the coach kind of deal. I think that is the driving force behind it, even more so than Anthony Richardson. Very exciting looking guy.
Yeah. I'm kind of all in on Richardson this year. I want to get him in as many places as I can, just because.
You drafted him first round? Of Dynasty.
Yeah.
The obvious.
For sure. Yeah. Like for sure in Dynasty. I think I picked him like 3rd or 4th last year a couple times.
How many quarterbacks in the league are you drafting ahead of Richardson if they're still on the board? Like who are you taking ahead of him? Is he the guy? Is he your number one?
It's like Allen, Lamar, Hurts. And then I think you could make the argument for Mahomes, but Mahomes has to throw like 40 something touchdowns to like have the upside. I think Richardson and Kyler Murray are really good picks this year in terms of fantasy, just because again, like, and this is not novel at this point. I think everyone knows it in fantasy, but like, it's truly a cheat code to have a rushing quarterback. Like, it's like having a running back and a quarterback in one roster spot. And so it just is, it's truly like a cheat code for your roster, for your team. And so you have to chase that, and it's going to be expensive and it's going to be risky. But like, you might win your league. I think you have to take some risks in fantasy. And this is the type of risk to take.
Does that diminish Jonathan Taylor's standing at all? The idea that you think so?
Yeah. Taylor is a hard one because
very Another guy you're not sure he's going to play. I mean,
yeah, he's like an extremely explosive, big play guy. But in this offense, it's like, is Richardson going to steal a lot of his thunder, steal a lot of his rushes, steal a lot of his touchdowns? Most importantly, I think they'll probably play it safe with Richardson around the goal line just because of how it went last year. I think he got hurt on a sneak, and then he got hurt running into the end zone, I believe, like getting the corner, and then basically fell on his back and hurt his head, hit his head on the turf. And so I think both of those were red zone runs.
At least
so maybe
I can't remember the other one.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I believe they were both really, one of them was either short yardage or red zone. And so I think you got to be careful with them, and that might bode well for Jonathan Taylor. But at the same time, I think the way that he can run, the way that he can do like Cam Newton style stuff where he's like skying over the pile, things like that, it definitely could affect Taylor's ceiling. I don't think he has nearly the ceiling as some of the other guys that are much better at catching passes and things like that.
All right, well, we can move on, and we've lost the entirety of our audience at this point because anybody listening to me agree with you on Anthony Richardson hype. I mean, talk about Titans fans being upset. If you mention anything positive about him online, it is, we're not even seeing this guy play. Come on, just relax. This guy, you might not even be able to stay on the field for more than 4 games a year. He's good at football, guys. Sorry. The Jaguars. Sorry. I only have one thing written down here, and it's what do I do with this team? Like, who do you draft any? Like, they got Trevor Lawrence. They got a rookie receiver.
What do we do with you?
Do any of these guys appeal to you, or are you just kind of like, I don't know?
I think ETN is still a good pick.
Okay.
I like Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram.
If you want to, if you want to like stay away from like using one of your like 3rd or 4th round picks on one of those top end like tight ends like a Kincaid or a McBride or something, like Evan Ingram is the perfect guy who's going to be up there with them every week because he really just has become a little bit just like Christian Kirk, as in it's like it's Kirk and Evan Ingram, and then probably it will probably continue to be that way, but it's like it's Kirk, it's Ingram, and then the other 5 or 6 guys are going to hash it out for fantasy relevance, but you can like know that Evan Ingram is going to get his touches, or targets.
Yeah. I think that's a great one. I think, obviously people point to the Doug Peterson tight end connection a lot, and that definitely like played out again this last year. Evan Ingram, he had like 100 something targets. Like he
led the team in targets.
Yeah. He was extremely productive. So yeah, I like that call. Evan Ingram, in terms of like tier 3, maybe tier 2, tier 3 quarterback or tight ends, he's got to be one of my favorite ones. And I really like Christian Kirk. I'm probably not going to be drafting a lot of Brian Thomas or certainly not Gabe Davis this year. And ETN, I think, is like, if you miss on that first sort of group of high end running backs, ETN still has a ton of explosiveness, ton of juice. And in theory, if their passing game gets a little more consistent, I think it could open things up for him on the ground a little bit. And also they just don't really have anyone else. Like Tank Bigsby was one of the worst running backs like I've ever seen last year.
Hey man, they keep saying they want to get him involved, baby.
I mean, JT was a Bigsby guy, so he
has only the only way he can go is up. All right.
I was last season. I was Devon Achane and Tank Bigsby to the moon. One of them worked out really, really great, and the other one, you know what? We're still waiting. Waiting.
Could have been worse. Yeah, could have been worse.
So it's funny because there was 2 guys named Tank out of that class last year. Tank Dell, Tank Bigsby. One of them worked out. This guy did not. But yeah, I mean, I think ETN's going to get a ton of volume. He's very explosive. Like I said, he might have a chance to score way more touchdowns this year. So I like him. He's not like one of my favorite guys I'm going out of my way to draft, but if you miss on the first like flurry of running backs that go off the board, I still think he has that high end potential to be an RB1. So I would say ETN, Ingram, great pick. And then Christian Kirk, I'm like rock solid wide receiver 2, who could finish as a wide receiver 1 just based on volume.
I want to talk about a couple of things just around the league that aren't AFC South specific, and then we can get out of here. The first is a fun question this time of year every year. Who's the team, and specifically for fantasy, the offense that people are not really talking about, and in 3 months we're going to feel really dumb for not recognizing the potential. Obviously last year it was the Texans, right? It was the 2020. Everybody's looking for who's that Texans team this year that's going to blow up. I have an answer, I don't know. JT, do you have an answer in mind?
I have an answer.
Danny, do you? Yes. Do we need to give you time to think about this?
Let me think about it. I want to hear your answers first, and then I'll
you want to go first, Easton? Or I have one that I'm really excited for. Okay.
You go. I'm curious if you have the same one.
I'm excited about like this team in general, but the offense for sure. The Arizona Cardinals with Kyler
Son
Murray
of a, that's my answer. No.
Oh, man, they're so excited. Hey, you wouldn't. This is so funny because he texted me. He said, "You think of one. I'm not telling you. I'm keeping it close to the vest."
I'm not telling you mine. You think of one.
I said Arizona Card. I mean, Trey McBride is an ascending, like I think this is second or third year guy who has just become a target machine. Like I think he's going to produce so much in fantasy. They finally have a bona fide one, and I like Marvin Harrison. I think
pretty good at football.
Marvin Harrison Jr. I think even though he's going in like the top 20 overall picks, like is in that second round, I think he's going to produce from the get go. And then, like you kind of alluded to earlier, like. Kyler Murray, man, at the back end of the year last year, when he was kind of cooking and he was back to form.
Guy in the league, in my opinion, fantasy-wise.
So, like for fantasy-wise, if you kind of want, like, it's crazy that like we talk about these running quarterbacks that are like Anthony Richardson, Josh Allen, these top tier guys who like can do both, and then Kyler Murray just kind of gets left by the wayside sometimes when he probably is one of the most elusive of them all to do it and can
year after the year guy, by the way, year after the year,
the biggest opportunities for himself. Also, like you said, year after the year, like if there's any rushing quarterback that I think you can get for an absolute bargain and a steal this year in fantasy, I think it's him. Once again, I just think James Conner is really, really good at football, and he gets severely doubted every single year. Like James Conner has always been my guy, no matter what.
How many generic NFL fans on the street could I like tell you what team James Conner plays for?
Not a lot.
It's not. It's not most.
He used to be a Steeler.
He used to play on that Le'Veon Bell team. Is he still in the league?
Running back, like, right?
Yeah,
that
guy. But then also like Trey Benson, I thought was a really nice prospect coming out. So like I'm really interested to see what Drew Petzing does in year 2 here with Arizona, and I think they could be like really, really fun.
I'm going to emphasize two things on that, and then I'll let Danny go with his team. If it's also the Arizona Cardinals, I'm going to make fun of you because you heard us say it.
I mean, that's a good one.
It's got to be somebody else. For me, the two biggest elements are I think Petzing is the goods. I really was impressed with, and I didn't watch a ton of it live, but like going back this summer, watching some of the Cardinals stuff because I get the inkling of, do I like this team? And I go back and I watch, and I'm like, And then you look down the stretch, I think people forget, like, they beat some good teams. Like, they beat the Eagles. They beat they beat some legit teams down the stretch, and everybody was making fun of the head coaching hire in the offseason. You know, are you riding the bus? And then like it kind of works out for them. Players are buying in. They got your boy Dortch, Greg Dortch.
Can't believe I forgot about him.
Kyler Murray. What was the quote this offseason? He's like, if Greg Dortch was not tiny, he'd be a top 5 receiver in the league.
Yeah. He had I can't remember exactly what he said, but fact is he's like 5'6", so that is.
He was like, if this guy was normal receiver height, he'd be so good, but he's not.
But then again, like Greg Dortch gets to go up twice a year against Travius Hodges Tomlinson, who is I think shorter than Greg Dortch is. So like that's the perfect matchup.
Battle.
Dortch mossed him.
Yes,
last
he did.
Year.
He did.
It
was
the shortest jump ball situation in NFL history, I think.
That's amazing.
That's like when he did like
5'8".
He did like the too small thing when he did it.
Well, as a shorter person, like there have been like 3 times in my whole life in a regular like pickup basketball situation where I've gotten an actual like legitimate block of somebody, and it's just you feel just that's what that is, and it takes the smallest like point guard making a very foolish mistake and shooting in my face, but it happens, and you're like, yeah, I'm big, I can do that.
Well, first of all, I like the Cardinals call for sure. I think they have a lot of value right now. I mean, I'm truly not pandering right now when I say like the most obvious choice here is the Titans, just because you're installing a new offense that could be very much different. It's a young quarterback who I think people don't have high expectations for. Upgraded skill group, upgraded offensive line, upgraded coach. I think the Titans are the obvious one where they could make like a really big jump, and the quarterback in particular could make a really big jump. The other team that kind of comes to mind here is the Saints, even though I wouldn't say like I don't know if my rankings
it's
really
gross, but I agree. It's
so
gross.
Like,
you feel dirty doing it.
This. Yeah. Like, I don't know if my rankings reflect this yet, but like the offense is going to be very different for the first time in a really long time. And I actually like their skill group a lot. Like obviously Chris Olave, really, really good player. I think he could have a breakout season. He's been nothing but efficient. throughout his career. I think Rashid Shaheed is a guy that has a ton of talent they could really get more out of, especially if he starts playing like legitimate number of snaps. Like the big problem with Shaheed has not been the talent or the efficiency or yards per route run or touchdown, big play ability. Like it's all there. He just doesn't play enough snaps. Like for whatever reason, Dennis Allen, I think still kind of like hates him for, I don't know like what the deal is there, but like, maybe he's a knucklehead, who knows? But like if he plays more than 70% of the snaps, he's like a lock for these 3 receiver sets that they're playing, or even 2 receiver sets. He could be a big breakout in fantasy. I like A.T. Perry a lot coming out. I thought he was a steal. Juwan Johnson, although he is hurt right now, he's another guy that I really like. And then in terms of like hidden value, Kendre Miller, if he ends up being like the 1A there, like along with Kamara, who's obviously going to be like a big part of their offense.
His legs weigh the same now.
Make a big jump. Yeah. What's that? Yeah,
his legs weigh the same now. How about that?
Huge deal.
That was a big thing in Titans media this year because they got the new coaching staff. They brought in a new strength and conditioning guy, and we got to speak to him once. And he was mentioning like the biometrics, measuring muscle mass left and right side, and everybody in town was like, I'm gonna write a story about that. And I was like, they've been doing this. I know all about this. Don't even worry about it. I'm an expert in this field. I noticed the guy you didn't mention was the quarterback of that team.
Well, that was what I was going to get to. Yeah. I don't have very much confidence in Carr, and I'm not like going out of my way to pick Carr. Yeah. But again, if the question is what team is going to outplay expectations, I have low expectations for Derek Carr. But skill group is good. They've made some changes on offensive line. Like they drafted Talise Fuaga, with their first round pick. They have invested a ton in this offensive line over the years. Hopefully they can kind of find 5 guys that'll really work for them. And again, bringing in a new offense for the first time in like for what feels like forever. This just could be like a different team.
It's a good point. It's going to be the Spencer Rattler show eventually.
I was about to say, once Spencer Rattler gets in the saddle in week 6, like it's the roller coaster is over. We're off to the races.
There's no bigger difference. Well, that's maybe not true, but like one of the biggest differences in starting quarterback and backup quarterback is like Derek Carr, and we don't even know for sure.
The vibes couldn't be more different from the nerd community because like people like our circles, it's like Derek Carr is the most hated quarterback, and during the draft process, it was like Spencer Rattler, kind of sneaky, horny. Yeah.
My take on my joke on Derek Carr that I have probably overused at this point is like he is the physical embodiment of throwing the ball away on 4th down.
Which just is infuriating. Yeah,
like he just doesn't want his stats to get messed up.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
That's so
he's just again, I'm not like confident in Carr necessarily, but like the change, skill group, hopefully the offensive line kind of figures it out, and this could be a team that's like a lot better than people are expecting, or especially in fantasy.
All right, so in conclusion, these 3 fantasy experts recommend you target the Tennessee Titans, Arizona Cardinals, and New Orleans Saints in your upcoming fantasy draft.
First round.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong. We've taken an hour of your time, and we'll get out of here, Danny. We appreciate you being on the show with us and spending some time with us, Knuckleheads. It is always a ton of fun to talk to you. I have one last non-football related question for you. As I am an impending father any minute now, do you have a famous bit of dad advice that I already know, but do you have any more dad advice for you? And maybe you share your famous bit of dad advice with people here.
For people that haven't heard me say it, the song for the big job of a dad early on in your baby's life, in my opinion, is to act as the person who steps in and soothes your baby when he's crying or she's crying. Because that's like you can't do a whole lot of extra other stuff.
Kind of useless otherwise. Yeah.
That's like if you can go in there and calm a situation when it's stressful, the baby's crying, it's like we're freaking out. Like
don't throw that baby out the window. Give it to me. Yeah,
exactly. Like being able to come in and soothe the baby, get them to stop crying is like such a huge thing for not only just like obviously it helps the baby, but like it helps your mental state, helps you be able to sleep. It helps so much. So one thing that we found, and this I'm giving all credit to Skippy, my girlfriend, she discovered this. Misty Mountains, the song from The Hobbit, is like it's like a magic. It's like a piece of magic. If you put that on, I've gotten probably literally at this point like hundreds of people that have reached out to me and told me
it's
that
universal.
I saw some like baby guru on Instagram posted this. Totally ripped me off.
But did they credit you? How dare they?
No.
Outrageous.
Of course not.
Cease and desist,
dude. But it had like 200,000 likes or something like that. Like it's like truly sweeping the nation.
Did you go through the comments looking for any to be like, "Oh, Danny Kelly said this first"?
So many people tagged me in that.
I believe it.
But yeah, it's like obviously I didn't invent it, but it's a great discovery that's very useful. I get a ton of people still to this day. This is like 4 years later, telling me how useful it is. So Misty Mountains of The Hobbit. Turn that on when your baby's crying. It tends to work at a really, really high rate. It doesn't work for everyone. I can't make any promises, but I would say the hit rate is like 85%.
That's strong.
Plus.
That's strong.
And so check that out. And then of course, and I'm not making any money on that. I'm just trying to help people out. The people that made the Misty Mountains
song, a recording deal, like a distribution deal under the table.
Get kickbacks from the Misty Mountain folks.
The residual checks in the mail.
The other thing I would say is just learn the 5 S's. This is from the book Happiest Baby on the Block. Again, I'm not getting any money for this. I'm just truly like, this is, in my experience, it was super useful.
If I go pick up that book and the author is like your mother, I'm going to kill you.
No, this guy, whoever wrote it, I can't remember his name. He's like turned this whole thing into like a whole cottage industry. He has like a ton of products. Like he's doing just fine.
Happiest baby on the block.
I don't need to help him by any means. I think he's a very rich person at this point, but yeah, he wrote a book basically on like there's 5 different methods for soothing a crying baby that are very useful. It's all based on instincts. Like the baby wants to feel like it's in the womb, so there's like rocking. I obviously they're all S's, so it's like shushing, swing, swaddle. I can't remember. There's 2 others.
You once told me you became a swaddle expert.
Oh, yeah, I was like the most competitive swaddler you could imagine. Like Calvin, my son,
swaddling.
Dude, it would piss me off. He was so good at getting out of his swaddle. I couldn't tie that thing tight enough. He would just get out every single one.
Just duct tape. Just wrap in duct tape.
Believe me, I had that thought. I don't think that's safe. I don't think that's something they would recommend.
Yeah, I think if CPS came to your door, they'd have questions. Probably. Probably a couple.
But yeah, man. Look that up. At the very least, just Google the 5 S's for soothing a crying baby. Because those are super important. It's like the one thing you can do to really, really help.
All right. Well, I'm ready. I sent you a picture yesterday. I got my Dad Force ones on right now.
You have them on right now?
Oh, yeah.
Are they on? Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, God. Oh, there they are. He's ready. He's ready at a moment's notice. The car is already packed. He's got them tied. He's got them locked.
Well, my best friend texted me. He's like, check your front door. And I'm like, are you at my front door? He doesn't live here. And no, it was these shoes. Yeah, they're awful. I hate them, but I have to wear them. So
you have to embrace dad life. I'm loving it. You're already embracing it. You're halfway there.
Okay. All right. Well, that's going to be it for today, Danny. Thank you for showing up, guys. If we have not, this entire show has been an advertisement for the Ringer Fantasy Football Show. It's awesome. It's very funny. Even if you hate fantasy football, you will enjoy it. It is a must listen podcast, and I don't have much time to listen to a lot of podcasts these days, but I make time for Danny and Danny and Craig. You guys are great, so we appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Check it out. Also,
live shows, by the way, right?
Yeah, we got a live show coming up in LA. We got another live show coming up in Seattle. If you guys are in any of those areas.
The Crocodile? Is that the name? I heard you.
Yeah,
what is this a club? Crocodile. What is the Crocodile?
It's a really old school, just like venue that has been around forever. I've gone to like a dozen shows there in my lifetime. Like it's big. It's
that's
sort of
a
iconic Seattle thing. It did move recently, which is a bummer, but it's an institution.
So right.
It's very cool that we get to go play there. But yeah, check us out. And we got our rankings up at theringer.com. Yeah, check us out.
The rankings must have if you're playing fantasy every year. Cheat sheet. And then you obviously draft based on that, and you know who to blame when things don't work out. Right. And then it's not your fault. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll be back on the show tomorrow. We're gonna do speaking of bits that nobody's understand, not even Danny. We're gonna do a taco show tomorrow. And if you're a fan of this show for a long time, you'll know what that means. We're gonna eat tacos and talk about football with Stoney and Zach live somewhere at a taco place here in Nashville. It's gonna be fun. It's 4:30 tomorrow. So tune in for that. If I'm not having a baby, I might not be there. We'll see. Again, I can't make plans. I might not be there.
I'm canceling the show tomorrow. Without you there, it's like
the bit doesn't make sense.
You're gonna do a solo show? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. No, we have 2 other people coming. But the entire point of us eating tacos while doing this show is because they make fun of the way that I eat tacos.
He eats. Danny, I'm gonna send you this picture afterwards. It's the worst. It's the worst way to eat a taco.
I'm already offended. I can tell I'm already gonna be mad.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to do that tomorrow. So tune in then. Danny, thank you. JT, thank you. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, I'm your host, Easton Free. It's been the Hot Read Podcast. We'll talk to you then.